My name's Josh. I'm a co-host on The Imperfects, the son of Sri Lankan and English immigrants, and I grew up on and am now raising my children on Wurundjeri country. I'd like to recognise the traditional peoples of this continent whose land was stolen nearly 250 years ago. In particular, we at The Imperfects would like to acknowledge the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation as the traditional owners of the land on which this podcast was recorded, and we extend our respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples. I'm inspired by the strength and endurance of the world's oldest living culture, and we at The Imperfects pay homage to the traditions of story when we share stories on our podcast.
Well, a very exciting episode today. We are rejoined in the Imperfect studio by...
As part of our summer bonus series.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yes.
These are bonus episodes. Technically, people should not be getting these.
Yeah.
I don't know. We must be feeling pretty generous.
Yeah.
Those free episodes. This is not on the schedule.
No.
We don't start, technically, for a little while yet this year.
We're very nice people.
God, you can say that again, mate. Is there a donate button or something that people can give us some thank you money or...
Swing by the studio, drop it off.
Yeah, cash.
Yeah.
Unmarked.
Yeah. We are so lucky to be joined by Lael Stone today. We asked Lael to come back in, first of all, by popular demand, because we've had a lot of feedback on Lael's episode she did last year where we talked about, and I'm going to use the title of your book here, which is a beautiful book, and people must read it. It is called Raising Resilient and Compassionate Children. That's what it was about, the last episode we had with you. But when I re-listened to it, I realised so much of it I actually applied to my adult self as an adult, not so much with I did apply it with my kids, but also just with relationships with adults. Particularly the part we talked about validating your kids' feelings when they come to you in a messy situation. I was so blown away with how applicable that is to our relationships with adults when an adult comes to you in a messy situation. And it's been really life-changing to me. So we've got you in here today. Everyone else can talk in a second. Sorry, I'm nearly done.
Have to wrap it up soon.
The others are here. We've got you in here today because we want to talk about transition. Well, that was the original idea because this is a time of transition for so many kids, starting school, starting high school, maybe it's even starting university, but it could be even just going up a year level, new teacher, new class, all that kind of stuff. But just off mic chatting about some of the other things that are on your mind at the moment, I feel like we can't not talk about these things as well. So let's start with transition. Well, anyway, how are you, first of all?
I'm great. Thanks for having me back.
Lael.
I'm super happy to be here.
Oh, it's so good. Just on your last episode, and I remember this when, there'll be a link in the show notes to that previous episode because I think it's a really good one to listen to because I remember when we were doing it, I don't have kids, and I remember thinking, well, this probably... I'll pretend I'm interested, but this isn't for me. But I remember
this one.
Yeah, just put this into cruise control. But I remember thinking during, this is it's for children, but it's like I was learning so much on how just to have healthy relationships with anyone. So anyway, just an encouragement to people to listen to the last one as well.
I would agree. I'd say I'm a better friend because of that episode.
Oh, you reckon?
A better friend.
No, I would agree. But Lael, yes.
Awesome. I'm so glad it landed in all the appropriate ways.
How's it having the book out?
It's very exciting. It's I think for anyone who's written a book, they know it's a long process. I used to work in birth, and so sometimes it's I used to equate when you do something really hard, it's like you've been in labour for a really, really long time, and just that last little bit when you have your baby, it's full of triumph. So it's been a long birth.
Labour. Yes, very long labour.
Yes. Right. But we're there, and it's amazing. So it's great.
It's so good. Well, so we're going to talk about transitions. Is that where we're going to start? Hugh,
I think. Yeah, but again, I'm already thinking about. I don't want people thinking, okay, well, I'll tune back in later in the episode when it's kind of. This is transition for kids, but I wouldn't be surprised if we take stuff away for us as adults how we transition. A lot of people find change very scary, and Josh, I'm thinking of Josh as one of them.
I've never been able to handle change.
Mm-hmm.
I had to change my bed when I was like 6.
Well, you didn't have to change it.
Mum and Dad bought a new bed, and it was so distressing getting a new, just not even like a new frame, like it changed colour or something. And it was like a mum, I think, put in about 6 months of prep work for me to be able to handle that change.
And even then, I remember you on the couch crying.
Yeah. And I still, when we moved house last year, we'd lived in this place for 10 years. I went back to do a last clean out and just check that we hadn't left anything behind. And it was where I'm getting emotional thinking about it, where my firstborn Charlie was brought into the world in that house. I cried more than I've cried, like not just a little tear, like a proper guttural cry walking throughout that house and driving home. And I knew it was going to be hard. I didn't realise how much I was going to be, and it's really, so change.
Yeah.
This is going to be a big one for me, I think.
Okay.
Wow.
Lots of questions to come.
Hopefully you can help Josh. He needs some help.
So transition.
Yes.
Really big change in a child's life. When people come to you and ask you questions around that, where do you start?
So I think, and again, we'll talk about the child, but it also relates to the adult as well. So the biggest thing about transitions is change, and change is scary, and it's the unknown that often makes us feel really unsure. And even for adults, and this, everybody would relate to this, we will often stay in situations that don't serve us because they're known, as opposed to stepping into something that is the unknown. It's why people stay in relationships that aren't great. It's why we stick at a job even if we hate it, because at least we know it. It's the idea of what could happen or what it might look like that feels really scary for us. And that for children is huge, right? Because we always come back to safety, right? Emotional safety. I need to feel safe to kind of interact in the world and see how things feel. So when it comes to transitions, whether that's your child starting daycare, whether they're starting kindergarten, whether they're starting school for the first time or changing grades, as you said, or even starting high school, it's really, really natural for them to feel unsure. Now, some kids are going to totally cruise through it. They're like, I'm ready. Let's get out in the world. Like, I'm off. I want to do it. Whereas other children might be a bit like you, Josh, a bit more sensitive and a bit more change feels hard. And there's a reason why it feels hard, because A, there's the unknown going on, but also sometimes there's grief around finishing something, and that can feel really tricky, the letting go, the grieving around it. So the first thing when we come to transitions is, and if we're talking about maybe little kids to begin with, is we want to validate and hear how they feel about it. So our default is often this. When our child, let's say they're starting school and they're like, I'm really scared about starting school and I don't know who my teacher is and I don't know who I'm going to play with. What do we do as adults? Our default is, it'll be fine. You'll have Charlie to play with and your teacher's this person and it'll be okay. And straight away what we do is we move into justifying why it's going to be okay, which is probably more for us as the adult to go, it better be okay. Right? You better transition well. So just a little shift from that can be something like, you feel a bit unsure about starting school. Tell me more. So what we want to do to start off with is just give them space to talk about how scary it feels and not fix it and not come in with why it'll be wonderful, but just give them space to say, this feels really hard. And again, come back to the adult version of you. You're about to start a new job. You're about to move house. I just moved house. I've lived in the city my whole life, and 7 months ago we just moved down the coast, and it was like we were changing countries. Like it was such a big thing because I've lived in this same area for nearly 25 years.
Wow.
And I watched even my husband and I do this whole like, is this the right thing to do? I don't know if we should do it.
Yeah.
And I watched myself move into wanting to justify to him, it'll be fine, it'll be okay, instead of just going, yeah, it feels scary, doesn't it? And it's hard. And then we moved down there and a week later we're like, this is the best thing we've ever done. Why didn't we do this sooner, right?
Yeah.
So I think the first thing is we just need to hold space for the fear. We need to hold space for the unknown, for why it feels scary, and not move into the fixing part of it. So
so practically that's saying to them, it sounds like you're unsure. Tell me more. Is that?
Yeah, tell me more. And what feels scary about it? And what feels hard? Yeah. So then they might say, well, I don't know where the toilets are. And you're like, yeah, that's tricky, right? And what else? And
so you're not saying, okay, we'll find out right now.
Well, what we do first is just give them space to voice it. And then what you might do after they've expressed their fears, do we need some more information, right? Because information is so powerful in helping us feel reassured, helping us understand what's going to happen. So we could then be like, well, we're going to have a day where we get to go to the school and we can find out where the toilets are and where you can eat lunch and who your teacher's going to be. And if that doesn't happen, then you could say, why don't we ring the school and ask them? So we want to give them as much information as possible so the child feels secure. This is what, I know what's going to happen here and that's okay. So I always come back to firstly, let's hold space for the feelings that are there. Let's give information when we can. And then the third thing, again, I come back to, particularly with younger kids, is around using play as a wonderful way to integrate what is happening in their lives. So for anyone who has little children will know when they start kindergarten or schools and stuff like that, they'll often want to play that. They'll come home and say, can we play schools? And often I say to parents, if you want to know what's going on in your child's day, play that with them. Because often the child will set up the game, they'll be the teacher and you'll have to be them, and then they'll often act out and they'll play out what's happened in their day. And that's how they process, it's how they make sense of what's going on, it's how they integrate all the stuff that's going on. So before we make that transition into school, you could say, do you want to play schools? What do you think it will be like? And you could set up a game and you play schools, you just follow their lead. And that's a beautiful way of integrating what's happening. Okay. Now, you can do that with anything, like if you have to take your child to the dentist, right? And there's going to be some stuff that's going on, or you have to take them to the doctors, play dentists, play doctors, but get the child to be the dentist, get the child to be the doctor. Let them be in the position of power and control, because it then helps them feel a little more powerful and in control of how that is.
Even if you think you'd do a better job of playing the dentist?
Yes.
I just feel like it's a role I'm meant to play.
We call these things power reversal games, and power reversal games are brilliant at helping children not only feel powerful, because kids can often feel really powerless a lot of the time because they're told what to do all the time, and so when they're feeling powerless, when we can play games where they feel powerful, where they're usually the ones that are in charge, that can make a huge difference. And we think about that I look at that in schooling. I remember my youngest, when she started in prep and grade 1, whenever I picked her up from school, she'd often have really big feelings, which many parents will relate to, right? Because when you're at school, you have to be good all day. And then when they get home to you, they're like, God, here's everything I've been holding on to. And, one little girl once I chatted with, when I said to her, how was school? She turns around and she says, I've been taking orders all day. And I was like, yes, you have. And so I used to play this game with my youngest daughter. Her name's Tali, and we used to call it Tali's Rules. And so when we picked her up from school, we'd come home and she'd say, we need to play Tali's Rules. And I'd go, okay. And what Tali's Rules was for 10 minutes, she was the boss of me. So she had to order me around, tell me what to do, tell me which way to walk. And it was all about power, right? And so I would make it really silly so she would laugh, because laughter is a beautiful stress release. And for 10 or 15 minutes, we'd play Tali's Rules, where she got to tell me what to do all day. Now, that was often enough to help her reset after a big day of being, in school or being told what to do. And those are things that can help with transitions as well.
Do kids ever take it with the kid? Because my first thing is all right, flush your bank account, transfer it all over to me. Do kids take advantage?
You're allowed to have some boundaries about what you are willing and not willing to do.
Boundaries? Tell me more.
But really what it is about, using those things like play, using things like just holding space for feelings, and again, not moving into the fix, because that's what we do as parents. And look, these transitions can happen whether it's starting kinder, school, but even my daughter, when she started year 7, the night before she was about to start year 7, she came into the bedroom and I was sitting there, and I really trust that children know what they need to do to kind of process what's going on. And one of the things she did, she stood at the end of my bed and she looked at me and she goes, I wish I was your baby. And I'm thinking, you're like 12, right? But I
wish I didn't have any more stresses in my life.
But I kind of was like, I really trust that kids know what they need to do. And one of the things with transitions is often children will regress back to certain places in their life where they felt safe in order to make that leap forward. So I'm watching her and she's like, she just walks in, she goes, I wish I was a baby again. And I went, come here, be my baby. And I grabbed her and cuddled her on the bed and I kind of kissed all over her and I was like, you are my little baby. And I watched her whole body kind of soften. She giggled a bit. I just loved on her like she was a baby for 5 minutes. And I talked about when she was a baby. And her whole body softened. And then she looked at me and she goes, I'm so scared about tomorrow. And I was like, I know, honey. I know. It's big. You're starting high school. It's really huge. And then she had a little cry and we just had a cuddle. And then that was it, right? And so we will find this when there's transitions, like if you have a new baby in your family, right? Then often the older kids will want to go back to being the baby. And what we often do is go, no, but you're the big brother or you're the big sister. And that's okay. But part of them sometimes needs to connect back in with, wow, I need to feel safe and held again as I make this leap forward. And it's really interesting that we will often do that as adults. We might not walk into our partner and go, I'm your baby. That could be kooky and weird, and in some relationships that might work. But often we can often feel that, oh God, I want to go back to what is my safety before I'm about to leap forward again. We do that as humans because we're going, gosh, this is a change and I need to feel safe again before we move forward.
Yeah, it's like often, people who have anxiety and get really, really scared or overwhelmed about situations, it's that want to just escape like your current situation, whether it's be like, I just want to like go overseas, or I want to quit my job. I just want to like leave it all. It feels similar to that.
Totally. And I think, anxiety it's our projection of what might happen. And that's what happens with transitions. What is going to happen here? I don't know. I'm unsure. How can I make myself feel safe again? And so our job, I think, as parents is to keep coming back to creating enough safety for our kids to go, hey, you can feel what you need to feel and that's okay. Because, my theory is always this, feelings are better off out than they are stuck in. Yeah. So when we can create a space that says, you feel scared, tell me more, let it out, have a cry. I know it feels hard doing new things, doesn't it? I'm going to be right beside you. Let's get as much information as we need. All those kind of things will help them then take that leap forward. And then once they do, they're like, I did it. Yeah. Right. And then there's more evidence for them in their knowing that every time I do something hard and scary, I can do it. It can be okay. That is resilience, right? That is our ability to step into something that feels tricky. I can do it. I can move forward. And knowing that you're right beside them and you're not, trying to brush over it or making them wrong, but just saying, yeah, it's scary doing new hard things, and I'm right beside you, and I believe in your ability to do it, and we can do it together. And that's what gives us, gives children the confidence to go, I can do hard things.
It reminds me of this story. So Jam, my partner, her grandmother passed away last year. And at the funeral, like, she's this highly revered woman in the family, Betty Moore. And she has like all these children, and there's this incredible stories about their family and childhood. And one of the stories that one of her sons told at the funeral was that, this is just on the topic of not fixing and not giving the answers and just, solving problems for your kids. He told this story about when he was really young, he was, 3 or 4 or something. He would be at home and he would say to his mum, say to Betty, how do you spell truck? And she would say, and she's someone who like loves words, and what her response was like, oh, I don't know, Neil. Maybe you grab the dictionary and let's find out. And I just love that. And then he would look it up and then they would like learn it together. And I just thought that was such a great example, because if I was a parent, I would immediately want to go TRUCK. Like, just prove to my child that I know how to spell truck. It would be like my instinct to show them, like, I don't want them to think that I can't spell truck. But I just loved that approach. I thought that was just such a good example of exactly what you're talking about, it seems.
Well, I think, and we kind of touched on this in our last episode, is that when something's wrong with our kids or something, they're going through a really tricky time, our natural instinct, because we love our children, is to jump in and fix it. And we want to make it better, because it's uncomfortable for us watching our child struggle. Like, it doesn't feel good for any parent. But when we jump in and make those fixes, when we try and, smooth stuff over, whether it's with friends or all that kind of stuff, we're actually often depriving our child of the opportunity to learn about that growth, to learn about resilience, to learn about, hey, I can feel hard things, I can ask for support, and then I can get through it. It builds that evidence within them that they have those tools and those skills there. And it's super, super tricky as a parent. Now, it doesn't mean that we just can abandon them. You'll be right, mate, whatever, go for it. We want them to know that we're standing right beside them. And so that's when we can ask those questions and go, what feels hard and what do you think and what do you need, so that we're placing back the power to them to say, what do you feel would help you here? Because I find in my experience, particularly when there's, bust-ups with siblings or kids or all that kind of stuff, when we can actually hold a space and help them both calm down first and then say, what do you think we should do next? There's a bit of back and forth, but often they'll come up with a solution that's far better than what you would come up with anyway, because it's about, they know what's going on in that situation. So I think a lot of the time as parents, it comes from such a deep place of love. We do not want our children to hurt. We don't want them to have to go through what we went through. And that's why often we project a lot of our stuff onto our kids, with schools, with friendships, with all that kind of stuff. We don't want our kids to feel what it was like to be bullied. We don't want them to not be picked in the soccer team. And it comes from a really well-meaning place within us as adults. But my invitation is to go, that's your story. Your child has a completely different story. And we have to give them space to live their life, to, work through what their story is. And we can be right beside them.
It's a hard thing to do, though. It's such a hard thing to do. I already think about Benji. I mean, this is really topical for us because he's starting prep this year, and it's been a huge, the last few months, or last 6 months, sort of trying to get him ready for starting school. But I'm already thinking about year 7. For some reason in my mind, that's why I keep going, how hard year 7 is going to be. And I've never understood why I keep focusing on year 7 when it's literally 7 years away. But I've just realised the reason is I think back to when I started year 7. It's really you turn up to a place and we had 200 people on your level and you don't know anyone, and you just go, okay, at lunchtime, go out there,
make friends,
and be fit in.
Yes.
And your most insecure time in your life.
But as a professional, Lael, and with your experience, how much would it help rocking up in a leather jacket? As a kid, is that going to help transition, as far as get the respect you deserve?
It'll go 1 or 2
Yeah.
ways.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because it actually, I've noticed that I haven't thought of the leather jacket thing. Maybe I need to do that. But I have found myself putting. Benji's not overly interested in sport at the moment, and I've been buying basketball rings and balls and bats and everything, putting them around him at the moment, and he just keeps saying stuff like, you like cricket, not me. Yeah. And he'll just
He's a smart kid.
He'll step over the cricket bat and keep going. Or he'll do something really amusing with it because he's quite a funny kid. And Penny, I can see she's deliberately not saying, stop trying to, but it must be hard for her. But I just, as listening to you speak now, I'm thinking, the way I got through year 7 was sport. That was my currency.
Yeah.
I remember literally first lunchtime going, there's a basketball court, I'll go and play those people, and that got me through.
Yes.
I think I'm literally already trying to teach Benji, mate, you play sport and that's your currency. And so in 7 years' time, when you don't know who to play with at lunchtime, be good at this and then you'll be fine. Yeah. So it's so unbelievably true. We project our own stuff onto our kids. I know this stuff. I've chatted to you so many times about this. And I've just realised that's why I'm trying so desperately for him to play sport when he's 6.
And here's the thing is, and this is behind all of that, Hugh, which is, it comes from such a deep place of love. As adults, we have to get comfortable with the uncomfortable, particularly when it comes to our children. And, in that last episode, we talked a lot about feelings, holding space for big feelings, and how often it is very uncomfortable for us because most of us never had that experience ourselves. And I think that's part of the work. We need to learn how to sit in the storm with our kids and not fix and not try and brush it over, because there is so much benefit for them knowing that, hey, there's an adult here who can meet me in this hardest, messiest, uncomfortable part. That gives me such an inner sense of safety and knowing that someone's got my back. I can get through this. It's when children have experiences where they don't know, something bad happens or they don't have someone to connect with, and then they don't have anywhere to take it. That's where it becomes trauma. That's where it becomes anxiety. That's where it becomes a whole lot of other stuff that we carry on, because then we've got to dig down, bury it down deep or find other ways to deal with it. So as an adult, and a parent, it is for me, and I've found this over 22 years of parenting, learning to sit in the uncomfortable with my kids is been the greatest skill I've had to learn how to do it. And
So hard though.
so hard. It's really hard. It's really hard. But when we can sit, and what that requires is us sitting in a place of trust, trusting their journey, trusting our connection with them, being able to sit there and go, hey, I'm here for you and I'll help you find your way through it. But, you can't do it for them. Because it's actually, you do a disservice to them.
This is very likely to be cut out, but I not what you just said, Lael. What I'm about to
I
say.
thought it was pretty good.
I was thinking the other day about like an analogy of like just going through life with a mindset of presence, essentially, and just like trusting in this moment, and then it'll be over soon. And remember like Super Mario Brothers, like the game. Remember playing that, and it's like you're moving across with the character, and the only thing you need to worry about is the stuff in the frame at that current moment. Like there's like a couple of like bad guys, you got to get through that, and then in a second, and then you get to the next thing, and you've forgotten about the bad guys in like 10 seconds ago.
You jumped over.
You jumped over. You've moved on, and I was like, that's actually a really good metaphor for life, really. It's just like, deal with the thing in the frame. We're going to move on in a sec. Bowser's coming. Don't worry about him. Right now, it's just a few little fireballs you got to jump over.
I'll pay that. That's not bad, right?
Good.
Because, well, it's kind of true. We spend a lot of time projecting into the future as parents. Exactly as you said, Hugh. What's going to happen in year 7? What's going to happen here? What's going to happen there? Instead of actually, where am I, or where are we right now in this moment with my child? How can I support them to feel what they need to feel, let it go, and then we'll look at what needs to come next. Instead of just like, what is this going to mean, in a year's time or down the track, all that kind of stuff. And I find when I work with parents a lot of what comes up for them is the projected fear of what may happen, as opposed to what are we seeing right here and right now, and what's our child showing us, and how do we need to respond to them in this moment.
I also think maybe you sort of said this, and I think you maybe did, but I've sort of, and it may be implied in what you said, but I think there must be a certain amount of value as well to, it sounds boring, but that kind of a stable consistency in that a child knows that they can come to you and there's going to be a sort of level-headed stability there, as opposed to a reaction.
That's massive. And I think, again, when I do a lot of work with adults and we go back into their childhood, because a lot of what happens to us as kids turns up in our adult life, right? The way we interact in relationships, the way we respond to certain situations. And a really big part for many, many people is growing up in an environment that was uncertain, which means at one point Dad was going to be fun and playful, and the next minute he was screaming at us, or you never quite knew what you were going to get. A lot of people had very maybe passive-aggressive parents, so you had to gauge constantly, what am I walking into when I walk into the kitchen, which puts you on high alert as a kid, right? Because you're like, I don't know what I'm going to get here, so I need to have my wits about me all the time. Now that has big impacts as we grow up into adulthood. We're constantly searching, is this safe? Is this okay? Do I have to keep this person happy? All those kind of things. So what you're saying is very true. When we can, as parents, find as much anchoredness, I call it anchoredness, and stability within ourselves, that children know they will consistently get a response. Now, it doesn't mean if you yell, every so often that it's all gone to crap. We all do. We all lose it at certain points. But the more that we can find our own inner stability and respond to our children when they are upset with, I'm here, mate, you've got big feelings, it's not too big for me, I can hold it. Or, wow, that sounds like a really big thing that happened at school and it's full on and I'm here. And we've got that calm anchoredness. That brings such a sense of safety for children, so they know, hey, this adult I can go to because I'm pretty much sure of what their reaction will be, which is, hey, I'm here and I'm listening and I'm curious, as opposed to flying off the handle or yelling, all those kind of things. And that's what causes a lot of uncertainty in children, So, and as humans, what we're all searching for is emotional safety. Is it safe for me to be who I need to be in front of you? Can I be vulnerable in front of you? Like all those things is what we're constantly looking for.
Yeah. It's hard when you're tired.
Yeah.
Is the first thing I think about. Like
it's really tough.
Like when you're sleep deprived, which Josh and I are a lot at the moment. I came in and boasted a lot because I got 8 hours sleep last night.
Amazing.
And Josh was woken up every hour on the hour, unfortunately. But it's I with everything you say, it resonates so deeply, and I think it's so good. but then I also have this thing of like, I know academically that's what I should be doing, but I struggle. I find it so hard when I haven't had sleep.
Yeah.
And they push you and push you. And sometimes you sit in the uncomfortable, you do the right stuff, you sit in the uncomfortable space and you do all the stuff you're meant to be doing, and you don't get the, you don't get the moment of your child saying, I'm really scared about school tomorrow, and you have a cuddle. It can often be unresolved.
Yes.
And then you have this sick feeling overnight of like, what? I've done everything I'm meant to do. I've got nowhere, and now I've got this uncomfortable feeling still. And it's I think I'm just saying this because I just find it really, really hard.
It is really hard, and you're so right, Hugh. When we're under-resourced, when we are stressed, when we haven't had enough sleep, when we're worried about money, it is really hard to turn up and be that anchored parent, which is why always the number one thing is, how do we take care of you first? How do we take care of the parent in order to take care of the child? Like, that's got to be the priority so that we can, fill up the cup so that we can be with our kids. But even in those times where we don't turn up in the way we want to, then there's always the next day. And the next day looks like, how do we connect? How do you start the morning by going in with Benji and connecting in a way like where it's playful or there's laughter? 10 minutes of play and laughter can do wonders to help a child come back online and feel connected with you. It's not so much you have to go and say, oh, I'm really sorry, last night I didn't parent you very well and I yelled a lot. Like, there is a lot of merit in repair, but we don't need to go over it again and again and again, because often what we're doing is we're wanting we're looking for our child to say, okay, I forgive you. Yeah. You repair once well and genuinely, and then you move towards connection, right? You move towards what their love language is, whether it's playing, whether it's drawing together, whether it's just, giggling together for 10 minutes. That builds the connection and the safety again, that the child goes, I can feel my parent again. So there's no perfect, right? We are all going to mess up, and there's times where we are way more stressed than when we're calm, and it's in those times where we've got to be kind to ourselves. We've got to be compassionate, and we've got to keep working towards, what can I do to meet my needs so I can turn up in the best way. And for anyone who's got little people, which I know you guys do, these are the hard yards, right? They're labour intensive. As your kids get older, there's bigger challenges, different challenges, but it's easier. But, for anyone who's got little people, this is where I think our culture, our country, everything, we let down our parents. We should be held with so much more resources and support and all that kind of stuff, because you are doing one of the most important jobs, which is raising this next generation. And the more that we can bring our best selves to help their nervous systems and help their spirit, then that's going to impact the world. Like, that is health, across the board.
Auckland Airport, I was there 2 weeks ago, and huge crowds going through security, and there was one lane that just said families. And the families just walk straight through with these little kids.
Love it.
And I was watching going, oh my gosh.
How unfair.
Yeah.
I was thinking, I do have a family. They're not with me. But can I come
still use it?
Here are some pictures of them. They're on my phone. No, but just stuff like that. Like that I remember thinking, going, oh, that makes the airport all of a sudden nowhere near as daunting a prospect.
Yes.
I agree. The amount of times I think, that scene in Gladiator where right at the end where Maximus Decimus Meridius fights, what's his name?
I don't know where you're going with this.
Where he fights,
the Joaquin Phoenix character.
Yeah, and Joaquin Phoenix meets him underneath the cauldron, and he puts a blade into his back and stabs in the back, and then wraps him up in his armor. And Russell Crowe has to fight him. He's already been stabbed in the back, and he can barely move, but no one knows. That's how I feel a lot of the time when I turn up to work. I feel like I'm so wounded right now, and no one knows how wounded I am from how hard last night was or this morning was.
Yeah.
But I'm just like, I'm here, but I'm not doing a great job, but I'm trying my hardest.
Yeah.
And I feel that so often.
Yeah.
I saw that scene the other night because I watch it Gladiator maybe once every 2 weeks. It's like, oh, that's how I feel at work. That's how I feel every day. I just feel so. Yeah. And I'm only saying it's just because I think a lot of parents. I mean, some parents I know don't. Some parents go, no, I don't find it that hard. It's challenging times, but I do find it very hard. Mm-hmm. And I do, that really resonates with me. We could probably do more to help.
I think my philosophy is this: if we are going to change where the world's at, it has to start in the families. We have to support parents more. We have to support parents to unpack their own traumas from their own childhood so they don't then, pass that on to their kids. We have to give them more resources and support so they don't have the stresses, because again, we're better parents when we are rested and when we're not worried about money. We all know that. We can be the good version of ourselves when all our needs are met. I think we need a whole overhaul, because what the work that we do as parents is so impactful, because again, when we can't meet our kids' needs, then we send them to school, and then the kids are acting out in school because their needs haven't been met, and the teachers are doing the best they can to hold that, and it just continues on. The cycle continues. And so I think we have to come back to, how do we support the family unit more? Because we're not meant to parent the way we're parenting. We're meant to parent in a village, and we're not. We're doing it all in our own houses by ourselves, and that creates even more pressure and stress. And then what we do is then we judge ourselves for thinking that we're not doing it well. Because if we're struggling and then we look at Instagram and we see some family, who's all wearing linen and they're doing great, right? Sorry to anyone wearing linen and doing that. But do you know what I mean? Yeah. No. But you see the highlight reel, right? And you go, well, God, they're making it work and I can't. And then we judge ourselves. And actually, we just all need a whole lot more compassion and support, really, at the end of the day.
What really speaks to me, though, is you saying we have to fill our own cups. That's the best thing I found I can do. Like, I will go home tonight and I know I'm going to be a great parent, no matter what's thrown at me, because I've had 8 hours sleep, had a running session this morning, get to the podcast. Those are my favourite things to do. And I know I'm going to go home, no matter what's thrown at me. I mean, it'll be hard, but that's really true. But I think this is more than just parenting. This is life. I think the busier we get, the less we feel a bit guilty when we schedule stuff for ourselves, I think.
I'm shocking at that.
Yeah. And so I do think we need to be better at going, no, I need to do this because we're better in our relationship, we're better 100%. Professionally.
Yeah. And I think the thing that, my thing I've been talking a lot about recently around self-care, we all know we need more self-care, right? We've got that. We've got those buzzwords now. We all need to take care of ourselves. But the thing that I often pose to parents is what is our imprint around self-care? And what I mean by that is, what do we watch in our family of origin growing up around those who modeled to us what self-care looks like? So and I do a lot of work with mothers, right? So for many, many women, I say, what was modeled to you around taking care of your own needs? And they all go, well, my mum did nothing. She just put everybody else's needs first. Yeah. She came last. Or she just worked and worked and worked, and then occasionally she'd get resentful and she'd be really passive aggressive towards everyone, and then we'd know, we've tipped too far. Or perhaps my dad, he never stopped. All he did was work, because that's what he thought being a good provider was. And so I come back to go, most of us have never had really good role models around what good self-care looks like. But then here's the thing is, then what happens is, because that's our imprint and we go, okay, well, a good mother looks like you sacrifice yourself for your kids. Then when you go, God, I'm at burnout, I'm going to take time out. You take time out, and then what happens? You feel guilty. Yeah. Or you have a story that says, God, well, my mum took care of 5 kids on the farm and, milked the cows every morning, and she didn't complain, right? And I've only got 1 child and I need a break, right? And then we compare ourselves. Whereas actually, all of us need self-care. And one of the things I say to any adult is, well, what was modeled to you around self-care? And is that story true that you want to keep carrying? And what would it look like for you to meet your needs, so that when we can actually meet our own needs with care, and we don't have that whole story attached to it, we actually are going to be the better parent. But we sometimes need to unpack the story we have attached to it, because I can't tell you how many parents I work with go, I want to take some time for myself, but then what they make it mean is, but then, I'm not a good mum if I'm not, with my kids all the time, or I'm not a good parent. If I take time for self-care, then my partner will need it as well. And then, that's more pressure for me. Or if I actually did have to stop, then I'd probably have to deal with what's actually going on in my life. And that feels pretty scary. So I'll just keep going. So there's a story attached to all of it.
So I really find this fascinating, because Penny's in this fight right now. In fact, I know she's talking to her psychologist about this very thing, because we had an issue the other night where I said it's been a tough day, we should both exercise tonight before bed. I went and did some gym stuff, and then I said, your turn. And she said, I can't, I've got to do this, I've got to do this, I've got to do this. And she just refused to exercise. And I was saying, and she said, no, there's too much stuff that needs to get done. I could tell she was a little bit disappointed that I had prioritised exercise over the shopping. And anyway, she had a session with her psychologist the next day. And I said, how'd you go? And I remember I said it thinking, I don't reckon I've come up well from this. Like, she'll be validating Penny, saying, yeah, you should go and exercise, you have to do all the admin stuff. And Penny said, you'd be surprised to hear how well you came off from today's chat.
Yes.
And it was the exact thing you just said. It was, well, there's two things. She said, she said, you're doing what you saw modeled to you as a kid. You're putting the housework ahead of everything else, the shopping, everything ahead of everything else, because that's what you saw. And she said, my simple question to you, Penny, is what do you want Elsie to be watching right now?
Oh, you got it.
Do you want Elsie, your 2.5-year-old who is watching like a hawk, everything you do, do you want her to prioritise the housework or prioritise her own well-being?
Yes.
And that changed everything.
Yeah. And you know what? I love that story because that's the thing that I find usually gets mothers particularly over the line when you ask, what do you want your children to be? And what are they watching? And that's with everything, how we prioritise self-care, how we speak to each other in relationship, how we feel about the work we do, how we feel about our bodies, everything. Our children are constantly watching. And I find that is probably one of the things that helps parents change the most. I don't want my children to do the same as me, so I need to model what that actually looks like.
I mean, I don't know about you two. I mean, I know about you actually, but Rhino and you, Josh, like, can you think of an example in our entire lives where Mum put her self-care before us? Or
No, I couldn't. No, not one. No, I think for our entire...
She played tennis on Tuesdays?
Yeah, but that was only when we were at school.
Yeah.
I can't think of a single time when she, put herself before us.
Yeah.
You know, I grew up with, a family of really strong, amazing women, right? And the story in my family is this: if you're not doing 4 things at once, you're lazy, right?
Yeah.
So that's what I watched growing up. So I became a mum and I was like, well, you just keep going, you keep actioning. And because I didn't believe that I deserved self-care, it wasn't modelled to me, then what happened is I became really resentful, right? And I became really grumpy as a mum. And somewhere in my belief system, I had this story that said, if mothering looks hard enough, then my husband will come home and say, oh, Lael, that looks tricky, you should take a break.
So you need to turn it on.
So I was a grumpy mum and I was really unhappy those first few years.
Wow, so interesting.
And here the whole time I'm waiting for Mike to come home and give me permission to have a break, because that's the only way I thought that I could deserve a break, right? Or get sick, really sick.
Spray yourself with water. It'll make it look like you're sweating under the arms. Like, oh, it's been so, my God. Thank God you're home.
Yeah, but here's the thing, when it finally all came to a head, because I was grumpy and upset and he's just like, this is just toxic, right? I'm like, can't you see how hard I'm working? I'm waiting for you to give me a break. And he goes, just ask for what you want. You don't need permission. But somewhere in my story, I had a belief system that said, no, the only way I can get a break is if someone gives it to me or it looks hard enough, instead of actually loving myself enough to just go, I need a break because mothering's really hard. Okay. And when I got that, it changed everything.
Because I see so much people who they think that the best thing to model is hard work.
Yes.
And like, it's like, work hard, get a job, and work is the thing that most people have, well, not most people, but a lot of people have modeled to them. And then they grow up and they feel, like lazy if they don't work all the time, or if they choose a life which is not driven by work or career.
Yeah.
And that's often, like, I think more and more as I get older, I realize that work is not everything. I mean, it seems like an obvious thing to say, but for many people, it is everything because that's what they've been taught.
Well, it comes back to that imprint in our culture. We are taught from a very young age that if you get good grades at school, you're enough. And then if you get good grades and they're good enough, then you go to university and you get into a good, you do a good degree and that makes you enough. And then you get a high-powered, well-paying job, that's enough. And then you drive the best car and then you're enough. Like, everything is about this external motivation to say, I am successful when I have these things. If I look good, I am enough. If I do this job, I am enough. Whereas actually our enoughness is innate. It's just within all of us. We don't need to be or do anything to know that we're enough. Yet we're conditioned right from the very beginning to think that that's true. And it's actually, what is success? Success is having a weekend where you go, I'm going to take care of my needs. I'm going to take care of my partner's needs, and we're going to have some slow. And we're like, that to me sounds like success these days.
I
right?
mean, it is, and I think I've over time, and particularly in the last 5 years since I've been passionate about self-care, I guess, and about what we talk about on the podcast, more and more I realise that the work aspirations that I've always had and I've talked about this a lot on the podcast, but the work aspirations I've always had, yes, it's something that I would love to do and it will be meaningful to me and are meaningful to me when they happen. But more and more I'm like, it's just a small part. And Jam and I talk about this all the time because it's like doing things that are seen to be indulgent. Like we whether it be travel or whatever is the thing that makes you really happy, whether it be like just cooking or running or whatever it is, it's like often those things are labelled as indulgent or lucky for some, and you feel guilty about it because you're not working or doing the responsible thing like doing the shopping or cooking or cleaning the house or whatever. They're the things that are labelled as like honourable things.
Yes. We reward struggle and grit in our culture.
Oh, yeah.
And again, you come back to what were we modelled, right? So you could look at your family of origin and what was their relationship to work. Now, most of us, I'll just talk in this kind of Australian working class vibe, was you work hard, and then you get to have a holiday at Rosebud Caravan Park. You work hard, you do all these things and you don't spend money frivolously. And, so again, we can watch what was that imprint around money and working hard. And I say to a lot of people who do my courses, did you watch your parent do a job that they love? Was there a lot of ease and grace around it? Did they feel so blessed to do something that felt amazing and they made money? And most of them are like, nah, it was just work hard at all costs, whatever, right? And I go, well, who says that has to be the reality for you? And that's why we then feel guilty when we have success, or we feel guilty for spending money on ourselves or whatever. And that applies to everything. We are modelled as children. Our parents were doing the best job they knew how, but we are modelled these stories. And then we watch them and then we take them on board and then we believe them to be true. And then we grow up to be adults, and whether we know it or not, we often repeat those same stories until we actually go, oh, that story doesn't even feel good. I don't want it to be that way.
Feel right. Yeah.
And then we go, and what am I teaching my children? Right?
Yeah.
What is that? Like, again, my story grew up is you work hard, you do jobs even if you don't like it, but that's what the responsible thing is to do. And then I got to a point where, in my early 20s, I was like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do work that doesn't light me up and doesn't feel good. I just know. And so I had to do a lot of work of changing that story and belief system to know it is okay for me to do something that I love and get paid well for it, right? What a concept.
And I just know I can already hear the voices of people listening to this thinking, yeah, well, good for some, lucky for some to be able to like not have to work hard, because some of us have to work hard, and it's true. Yeah. So it's true. Like some people aren't able to give up working a job that they don't like. So I think it would be important to just acknowledge that. But if you could talk about like that idea of, for people who hear that and they'll go like, well, I can't afford to not work 6 days a week.
Yeah. Look, yes, thank you for saying that. I want to hold, we need to give context to that for sure. I think what I lean into around that though is we all have choice in our world, right? And we all have the power of perception of what we make things mean. And so, we all find ourselves in situations where we do need to put, food on the table for our kids, and we have to parent and all that kind of stuff. But we have the power of choosing the energy we bring to that, right? And so I think one of the things that I often see is that we grow up in these families, we take on these stories and these imprints, and often we just repeat them until, some crisis happens in our life or something goes on and we actually go, well, I don't know if that feels good for me, maybe I want to change it. But then there's often a lot of stories that are connected to that as to why I can't change it, or people might judge me if that happens. We're complex beings that often have a lot of stories that go in our head that dictate the way we do things. So, I go, yeah, we all need to work hard. There's times where we have to do stuff where things are tricky. But I think we also have the opportunity where we can look at our life and go, and does this feel good for me? Is this how I want to live for the next 20 or 30 years? And what could I do to take steps towards it feeling like there's more flow or feeling more joyous around it? Because again, we're all looking through a certain lens at life, and the way that we respond to it has got to do with what we believe to be true and also what actions and steps we take. That's what I come back to all the time, of that we all have our own unique story, and we also have the opportunity to write the story we want moving forward. Sometimes it's easier for sometimes it takes a lot of work, but we all have the power of possibility. That's where I sit.
Everything you're saying is incredible, and I agree with all of it, and I know it's true, but I can't work out how I can possibly do it.
Yeah.
I think I can. I think potentially, and it's not like Soph's out there doing having all this me time either. I think she's very similar to me in that we both really struggle to carve any time out for each other to do things. I kind of feel like the only time in my life where I have me time, it has to be in service of the family. So it's going shopping, like if I can go and do a shop by myself, that's the me time for that week.
Okay.
Or if I can fix the thing that's broken. Like I quite like fixing things and doing things with my hands. So if I could fix that toilet door, whatever, for 40 minutes, that's the me time.
Yeah.
And I think Soph is exactly the same. And I feel everything you've said I logically agree with and think is brilliant, but it feels like such a massive hurdle of guilt to overcome.
Okay, so that was going to be my question to you. Let's just say, Josh, that you were like, right, I'm going to take 3 hours for myself. I'm going to go for a swim, or I'm going to go to a movie, or I'm just going to do whatever. I'm going to lay on the couch and look out the window by myself, right? What do you make that mean? Like, what are the stories and the thoughts and the feelings that come up for you when you think about doing that? What goes on in your head?
I feel selfish.
Okay.
And like a bad dad.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So then if we were to look at that, right, where does that story come from? Because it is just a story.
Yeah. I don't know where it comes from. I mean, there's obvious answers that both my parents worked incredibly hard and never took time for themselves. So it probably comes from there. But I know logically it's not right, but I also just can't. I don't know. I've always been able to. I think people have said to me in the past jokingly, I'd make a good Catholic because
carry guilt.
Guilt comes pretty easily to me.
Because here's that piece within that, right? What I'm hearing you say is that if I take time for myself, I'm selfish. But is that true?
Well, I feel like at this current point in my life, if I'm taking time for myself, it's putting more pressure on Soph.
Okay, so that's probably the piece, right? So we can get mixed up with I'm selfish if I do that, because the reality is we know you're a better dad when you filled up your cup, right?
Yeah,
you actually are going to be a better partner, a better dad. But then often it can get intertwined with, well, if I take time, then that's taking time away from Sophie.
Yeah.
But it actually doesn't need to be that way, because we can somehow, and I don't know what the solution is, but it comes back to how do we both get our needs met here?
Yeah.
Now that might be, well, let's outsource it. Let's just see if someone can come and be with our kids, and I don't know, it looks different in every family, but we often think, particularly in self-care, well, if I have it, it means I'm taking away from you. And it shouldn't be that way. It should be, how do we both get our needs met within this? Sometimes that's getting someone else involved within it. But the story, coming back to the story, is I'm selfish if I do it. I would say is probably, it could be a bit of cultural conditioning. It could be from your parents. It could be, there's many places it can come from. But we have to step back into the adult self of us and actually go, well, is that true? It's actually probably not true, because I am a better parent when I look after my needs. The part that feels messy around it is it going to put more pressure on Soph? Okay, so how do we work with that to alleviate her pressure?
Yeah.
And so I think that's where we have to stay open to the possibilities to try and, get everybody's needs met.
Yeah, you're right, absolutely right. I think part of me feels like, I'm sorry to make this all about me, but part of me feels like, well, she currently is on leave from work, so she's doing the harder job of looking after and raising children a lot of the time during the day.
As opposed to looking after me and Ryan.
Yeah, I get to come in here and spend time with Ryan and Hugh and Bridge and just work amongst adults. I can walk up the road and get my lunch. I can come back. There's all these times throughout the day where I feel like I'm already getting that, and it's unfair of me to then go, I need some time because I'm working. It feels unfair, like I should already be okay because she's doing the harder job.
Yeah. And again, I think that comes back to our own perception, because there is no doubt she's doing a hard job, but so are you. You know, there's a lot. There's a lot of pressure when you have a young family and working and earning money and then, you know, being at home with little kids and all that kind of stuff. There's pressure no matter what. But I think I always come back to it is, if we can look at it from a lens of we both need support here, not you deserve it more or not. We both deserve it, right? It's hard for both people. And so how do we take care instead of kind of keeping score with each other of you've had this and then you've had that? Because as soon as we do the who's doing it tougher game, nobody wins at all. Yeah. And it comes back to being a team, you know, especially when you've got little kids. You know, it's that how you've had a big day, honey, what do you need? How can we do this? It's I think that comes back to that compassion within ourselves of what we both need, this love and support and tenderness right now, and knowing that we both deserve it. Because, you know, what I would want to say to you is, Josh, it is so beautiful hearing you say, oh, you know, she's doing the heavy load at the moment and I want her to be supported. But I also want to add to you deserve to be supported as well, right? And that I think it often comes back to us in our own compassion of we are all worthy of being supported and taken care of. And it's not a competition, even though I know it can be one. And at the end of the day, we all know this. When we meet our needs, we are better humans, right? And it's our cultural conditioning and the imprints that we have that tell us otherwise. Yeah,
absolutely. It's very. I love that reframing it, because it's so easy to fall into a weekly, just logistically thing of like, all right, well, I'll get my half day here, you have your half day there, or whatever it is, or a few hours, a half day would be great. I'm sure we'd both love that, but it's easy to start the keeping score thing.
Yeah, it's
which
really big.
It's a bad direction to go in.
Yeah. I would say, like from the couples that I chat to about this stuff, not in a bad way. Well, I guess in a bad way, but I think a lot of couples do that. Like, who's doing it tougher? Who needs support more, as opposed to
we're a team here.
We're a team. Like, we're on the same team. We both need
trying to elevate each other here with.
How can you be even more awesome so I can be even more awesome?
Yeah.
That's what it is, because and I found that in my own relationship in the early years of parenting, when I finally got over this story of I need permission to look after myself. My husband's like, oh, whatever you want, just ask.
Yeah.
I'm like, no, you should be a mind reader. You should know what I want, right? But when we shifted that, it became so much more about what do you need, babe? And what do you need? And it became all about tenderness and working as a team, and it changed everything. Because then I wasn't yelling and grumpy with the kids because I was getting my needs met. He wasn't coming home to a really angry wife, so it felt better for him. Everything felt better, right? And there were times where we're like, well, we need to outsource a bit, or we need extra support, or we're going to say yes to it whilst we're doing these hard yards with little kids. But it was the biggest game changer to becoming the parent we want to be, because it comes back to how do we meet that? And so I would say to anybody listening, lean into what your story is around this. What do you make it mean around you having care? You know, do you make it mean that you then have to compete for it? Do you make it mean that you're then selfish? Do you make it mean that, you know, you're lazy? Like, what is the story, and is it actually true? Because most of the time it's not. It's just a belief system that we've carried, and it actually doesn't serve us, and we need to pick it up and put it down and create a new belief system, which is I am worthy of being taken care of. I am worthy of being loved. I'm worthy of having my needs met. And so then I can actually be the parent I want to be.
Yeah. It's almost like you need to think about it in terms of, in a partnership, you need to be each other's really good personal assistant. like thinking about like, oh, how can I make your day really good today? What can I do to help you out? And if you're both thinking like that, then you're sort of like,
you got each other's backs.
You got each other's backs, and you're never going to feel that sort of selfish thing, because it's like, oh, they've organised this massage for me. Okay, I guess I'll go do that. It wasn't my choice, but they want me to have it. Like, that would be great.
I used to joke to my husband. I'm like, if you want sexy time, babe, then do the dishes, mate, or just vacuum. Because I'm like, you do that, and I'm like, woof, okay, this is we're on. I was like, it's not hard. you just got to just do a little bit more heavy lifting here, and then I'm like, I'm all yours. Right? So I'm just saying that to most men out there. Women respond to that stuff.
It's good to know.
I'm just going to write that down. It's funny, just on what Josh was just saying, then I think about every night around 10:30 before I go to bed, I go out to the car and bring in all the stuff from the day, like my wallet, my keys, my bag, my laptop, everything. And every night I go, why do I, like, I'm about to go to bed and I go, I'm going to get my stuff in from the car. I've left it in the car. Like, tomorrow, why do I do this? Why do I leave my stuff in the car? This is ridiculous. Like, and I was like, tomorrow when you get home, when you get out of the car, you just have to remember or pay attention to why you're not doing this. Then I realize every night I get home, I feel like I have to get in the house as quick as possible. I cannot. It would take literally an extra 20 seconds to get, but I don't feel like I've got that 20 seconds to bring my stuff into the house. And so that's not Penny's fault. That's on me. But that's like, I feel like a real life example of like the guilt you feel around. Like, I don't feel like I have the luxury of taking 20 seconds to get my stuff from the boot and bring it in.
Yeah.
Like I think it's such a real experience for so many people of just like, if I'm not at work, I got to be inside helping. I can't even bring my stuff in, which is ridiculous. But I just realised that literally last night.
That sounds pretty reasonable. Not reasonable, but that sounds very familiar.
And look, I love that you're like, God, I got to get in there and help.
I run down the driveway.
Some people are like, I'm just going to drive the long way.
I do that sometimes too. But as soon as I get home,
then you're on. Yeah.
I do feel like this would be a really common like tension point in a lot of relationships. It's certainly the couples who I speak to around parenting. I feel like there'd be a lot of tension around this as far as who's doing what jobs, how much have you done, how much have I done, I'm doing more than you are. I just feel like that's a very common thing. And then on top of that to say, but I also need 3 hours every couple of days to run or to watch a movie, especially when the mums, I think, are at home. And I'm stereotyping here, but this is the families that I know. The mums are at home all day and the dad will say, I'm going to play golf now. Or the dad will get home, the mum will say, I'm out, I'm going, I need to get it, or whatever it is. I feel like there's a very common tension point for a lot of relationships. I cannot believe how much Penny and my relationship has changed since having kids. I know it's an obvious thing to say, but it is so far from what it used to be, and not in a bad way. I mean, not in a bad way at all. I saw a photo, I was going through my photos, I saw a photo of us together before we had kids, and it just looked like I was looking at a different couple, like two different people. The pressures that come onto a relationship through having kids and the balance of trying to look after yourself but also not dump heaps of stuff on your partner. I find this must be a common thing that you must talk to a lot of couples about.
It's really huge, and I think again it comes back to support again, and it comes back to, I guess, our having our needs met and our feelings heard. So a lot of the time when we're in those dynamics of, well, you had 3 hours here and you had this, there's not only that, well, what that really says is I'm not getting my needs met because I'm actually angry that you are, right? So it's an indication of like, well, okay, well, how can I meet my own needs? But it's also, I think, comes back to we carry a lot of frustrations as parents and we don't actually find healthy ways to express them and we take it out on each other because there is no doubt there's pressure, there's stress, all that kind of stuff. Now, you might catch up with your mates, but you don't really want to bring that, oh God, it feels really full on having this and this and this. So for some people, they're like, I don't want to talk about it. I want to just be somewhere else. And I think it comes back to that we as adults, particularly in those early years of parenting, and actually even it's the same when you have teenagers, we often need a safe place to take our feelings, to vent it so it's not projected at our partner, to kind of be heard in some way so then we can come back and say to our partner, God, I've got a lot going on for me at the moment because I'm making, you going and playing golf, I make it mean that I have to do more, or I'm making it mean that you're selfish because you don't want to help out or whatever. Being able to own our piece in the story is really vital. And I think we forget that when we're in that early years of parenting because it's about survival a lot of the time. It is about how do we get through each day? How do I try and get enough sleep? How do we just, make sure everything is still functioning? And that's why I think I always come back to we need support. We need to be able to have someone to talk to that's not our partner where we can vent all those feelings and come back. Whenever I was really mad with my husband, I would always go and share it with someone else so I could just vent it and clear what was mine so I could be like, I'm making it mean this or that's where it's sitting for me. So then I can come back and speak to my husband and go, so I had this story going on. It was this. Yeah. And I was actually then compassionate and kind. I was not mean and I was not nasty, right? Because then, of course, when you go to someone like that, what are they going to do? They're going to defend themselves And then you get into this battle, and then your children are picking up the vibe going, this doesn't feel good, and then they respond. So I think it comes back to, again, is how, and that could be just a friend where you say, can you just listen to me for 10 minutes? I need to just have a rant. I don't need you to fix me. I don't need you to say anything. I just need to get all of this out so I can release the sting of it, as you say, come back and then have an adult conversation. Because whenever we're getting into the tit for tat as you know, in parenting, most of the time it's kind of the child wounded parts of us that are popping up, having that conversation. Because the embodied adult would be able to sit there and go, honey, I'm finding this really tricky. How's it feeling for you? What do you need? This is what I need. This is what would feel better. Like, that would be a civilized adult conversation. But that doesn't happen a lot because we get so reactive in our child part of us that hasn't been met.
So you mentioned functioning under pressure there. This is a common one I hear a lot, and one that Penny and I think a lot of parents would sort of experience this. When you have one of the really difficult things under pressure, when it's really kicking off and you're sleep deprived, when you come at it with a different parenting style in a certain situation. So I would like to know what the best approach is, because Penny's approach is to pick me up on it as it's happening, which is probably a healthier way of doing it. My approach when we do that is to just go silent and not talk to her for 4 hours and avoid everything and everyone. Penny's definitely the better approach. What are you meant to, like I'll literally walk off and sulk for a long time.
Yeah.
What are you meant to do? And it sounds like I'm saying here's a problem from our relationship, but I reckon every parent.
Yeah, it's true. Well, because we both, you know, we come from different family of origins and we come together and then we try and parent, and it's most households there's clashes, right? Because we've got different ideas of what it looks like. So my general rule is this, because I see this come up a lot in relationships, is if one parent is doing something and the other parent comes in and says, you know, don't do that, or the first parent feels really undermined, and then they're like, we need to be united front for our children and all that kind of stuff. And I do absolutely get that. But I kind of come back to this general rule. If we're parenting in a way and we're losing it, so we're yelling at the kids or we're getting really frustrated, I think it is wisdom for other parent to come in and say, hey, this feels pretty big. How about I take over for a minute, right? Not make you wrong. Just be like, the goal here at the moment is the children, and there's lots of elevation, there's lots of feelings, and whenever an adult's into that yelling, angry spot, they've lost it. They actually need a timeout. The adult needs to go outside, chill out, take a deep breath, and whoever's the calmer adult needs to come in and hopefully deal with the situation.
It's kind of like in those cop movies when there's an interrogation and like one cop gets a bit like hot-headed. And it's like, and they walk out, they smash the wall, and then like the other kind of kinder cop comes and it's like, sorry about him.
So I think here's the thing is, you know, in relationship, and this comes up a lot, we're all doing the best job we know how. This is my bottom line, right? We don't yell because we want to. We yell because we're stressed, or we're behaving in a way because that's what was done, modeled to us, all those kind of things. So in relationship, when there is a difference, right, I always, in the immediate thing, whoever's bringing the most calm, that's what we need to do. And then after we've kind of dealt with the situation for the kids, then we need to come back to each other. And I used to do it this way, which is like, how did that feel for you with the kids, right? So I'm not making you wrong for doing it. I'm just saying, how did it feel? Because, you know, you seemed pretty activated, and that's big, right? And that was something that both my husband and I had to learn how to do with each other a lot, because I would come in all permissive, he would come in all hot and authoritarian, and it never worked. And he was really mad because he looked like I had no boundaries, and I was mad because he was coming in, you know, really powering over. And what we got to is, again, in the adult part of us, I'd go, that didn't feel good for any of us here, and it didn't, I think, feel good for the kids. And if connection's our priority here, how could we do it differently? So in the heat of the moment, I'd just try and make the calm and then leave it until the parent has kind of calmed down, and then afterwards, so how did that feel for you, right? Because we are all doing the best job we know how. There is no perfect, right? And particularly if you're trying to parent with some form of consciousness or awareness, it's like learning a brand new language, right? Because it was not modeled to us. So it's very tricky to do. And so that's why it's clunky, and we need to practice lots, and we make mistakes, and we need to be compassionate with each other. So, you know, I find that often when I'm working with couples, come back to this place of, you know, the only time to have a conversation is when we're both calm, not when we're activated. It's not going to go anywhere good. And to come back and go, well, how did that feel for you? What was going on for you? How do you reckon it landed with the kids? Let's come back to, again, what our values are here. What do we want our kids to feel? You know, what is the story behind this? And that's where we can kind of work from. But it's often very triggering for adults because we default back into our own stories and we'll defend our stories and, and sometimes we need a third person to help us do it. It's hard.
There's an episode of, so last year, 6 new episodes of Bluey came out. You're probably a bit past Bluey. Your kids are a bit too old for it.
Yeah, they're way old, but I do watch Bluey occasionally because I think it's pretty good.
Yeah.
How they do
So
stuff.
there's an episode, in my opinion, my favourite episode of Bluey out of the many, many episodes called Facey Talk. And so mum and dad, Josh and mum, like our parents love it too. And this episode came out on this particular day and when mum and dad were over. So mum and dad are watching it. I'm on the couch watching it. Benji and Elsie are so excited. Penny's there. And I guess the premise of the whole thing is that the kids are trying to have a FaceTime with their cousins. And then one of the kids takes off with the phone. The dad's chasing them. And in that chase, you can see everything that's happening in the other family's household. And the parents have a disagreement on how they should be parenting in that moment. And they snap at each other. And then, it's hard to say it now, but in the in the end of the episode, you can see through the FaceTime call in the background, you can see the parents trying to reconcile their differences, but none of that, but sort of restore the relationship and acknowledge how hard it is. And they hugged. It's just in the background. It's just an episode they hugged in the background, and everyone's watching it laughing because it's a very funny episode. And I was bawling my eyes out. The episode finished, the credits went down, and I was sitting there going, God, no one look at me. Please don't look at me. And then Benji turned around and looked at me and he made the strangest face of like, you could always see him going, did I miss the tone of that? I thought that was funny. What have I? But it's just, and that's not like that's genuinely not an insight into me and Penny's relationship of disagreeing. And then it's just to me, it's like, it was just a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful summary of like how hard it is.
Yes.
But then the importance of, like you talk about restoring a relationship with a child but doing it as parents or adults in a relationship, restoring that relationship when there's the problem for Penny is she's got to find me first. I'm usually sulking somewhere in the house and she can't find me. But yeah, Facey Talk for anyone who it's the most perfect summary of what we've just talked about. I think.
And I think what you bring up there is really important is, yes, repair with our children, but also repair with each other. Like it's really hard what we're doing, and we need to move more into compassion. We need to be able to apologize to each other. Sorry, I snapped. Sorry, I lost it. I'm feeling stressed. I'm feeling tired. I'm feeling scared. I'm feeling all those things. The more we can own what we're feeling, then we're able to turn up with our partner with more empathy and compassion, which then allows them to soften. Because whenever we're playing the right and wrong game, we're always in protection and we are going to protect ourselves, right? And so we have to put down the battle swords, right? And go, hey, we're on the same team here. And how can we support each other? And that comes back to sometimes that tenderness that, this is full on, isn't it? What do you need? That love, compassion. I mean, that for me is the way we have to get through early parenting, and then and I often feel like we've got a few good years between about the ages 6 to 11. It's pretty cruisy, and then when they become teenagers, you're back again going, okay, get through this piece. But and that's not always, but I think it's the more in relationship we can work as a team and come back to that and own our stuff, the better off we're going to be moving forward.
I don't know if I'm wrong here, Josh. I feel like you've got a good question simmering away.
Oh no, I don't. I'm just in awe, in awe of what Lael's saying.
Yeah,
no.
It is really amazing. I feel like we're to start this conversation talking about transition.
Yeah, we've really moved off topic. But
we've started talking about
gone somewhere, right?
sexy time in the dishes, and then it's ended up with relationship counselling for everyone who's listening. But, as always, like I didn't. We had a plan, but it's just gone to a really special place. I think.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have children, but I think I would learn a lot from raising resilient and compassionate children.
Hey,
Your
the
book.
book.
Yeah. Incredible, Lael. Thank you so much for coming in and sharing all that.
I mean, it's such a generous, like you give examples from your family, and obviously, that's generous from your family as well to say, go for it, Mum. So just the whole Stone clan. Thank you.
Thank you, Stones.
Yeah,
once again, we got stoned.
Are you using that? Did you say that last time?
Yeah, I think so. Just sitting around getting stoned again.
Yeah. I hope everyone's enjoyed getting stoned out there, wherever you are.
Getting stoned with Lael.
Oh,
Whether at work or you're going for a walk or just at home with your partner. I hope you enjoy getting stoned with
How
us.
does that align with your brand values?
I'm thinking it's probably not
quite right.
the best alignment, but that's okay. I'll roll with it.
I'm just thinking about all the kids at your school who get stoned every single day. I mean, it's just so great.
Cut that out.
Not okay.
Well, Lael, thank you genuinely for coming.
Pleasure.
It's great to see you again.
My pleasure.
Thanks, Lael.
Thank you, Lael. If this episode has been triggering for you, we strongly recommend Lifeline on 131114. The Imperfects is hosted and co-produced by Hugh Van Kylenberg, Brian Shelton and Josh Van Kylenberg. This episode was produced by Bridget Northeast, filmed by Andy Poole and edited by George Martin. A special thanks to Dr. M for her expertise and guidance. We'd also like to thank the Resilience Project for their ongoing support.
Like you were never there at all.